I think we can start now. So hi everyone, my name is Reina. Before we start with Jeff, actually want to just start a little explanation of what is the Resource Global, just in case this is the first time ever you know about Resource Global. We'll just explain a little bit. So Resource Global in Indonesia specifically, but Resource Global in general as well, was initiated in Jakarta in 2014 through the generous support of the Plan Foundation, who had identified Jakarta as a strategic city in a global mission. So our founder, Tommy Lee, he actually traveled 5 times in 2 years. Within those 2 years, from 2014 to 2016, when we start our first cohort in Jakarta, to learn about Jakarta and connect with key individuals in the city to lay the foundation of Research Global. And the initial board was formed in Jakarta. These are some familiar names, probably for you, for a lot of you. We have local leaders. We have Pastor Andrew John from HMCC. We have Pastor Dave Kenny from IES. And we have Pastor Parno, and he's the marketplace leader and elder at GICF. And together they prayed, dreamt, and built a program purpose to raise up and disciple Christian young adult leaders, specifically marketplace leaders that desire to make an impact in their city through the vocation God has placed them in. And around 2016, 2017, we actually start the first cohort in Jakarta simultaneously with the cohort in Chicago. So for the first year, we actually have around 25 cohort members. There were monthly teaching sessions as well as one-on-one mentoring sessions, so very similar in that sense with the current program, but only about, and we also have global cohort gathering, which will be explained more with by Jen, our program director. But it's basically in the US at that time. It was in San Francisco, and we have around 25% of our cohort members in Jakarta who attended the global cohort gathering in San Francisco at that time. But those cohort members that attended were deeply moved by the speakers and their convictions to play a role in loving their city as well. And little did we know that this first cohort will now be in such strategic position of influence in their businesses and in their city. They are now leading in family businesses, startups, corporation in Jakarta, while also investing into our successive cohorts as disciplers and alumni. So this first cohort, second cohort, the alumni, those are probably faces that you will see as well as they are becoming a speaker, becoming our mentors, becoming our triad leaders as well, smaller group leaders. So there are familiar faces, and as you will hear more about our program, this will be much more they will be much more familiar for you as well. And fast forward 2024, we are now in 14 different cities. So if you see in the map right there, South Africa, we have 3 different cities in just South Africa alone. And then we actually gonna launch Cluj in Romania, not pictured here. I'm gonna launch LA, not pictured here as well, for next year. And we're always constantly looking for new cities that we hope to be able to spread the word and bring impact to their cities as well. So without further ado, I want to explain more, just introduce as well our speaker of the day. So these are Jeffrey. I believe Jeffrey is here. Yes. So Jeffrey was born in Medan and studied abroad for a decade. He came back to Medan to continue his family business. And Jeffrey here is actually part of our alumni as well. So I know we have some alumni who are joining here in this talk today. And Jeffrey is also part of the cohort, part of the alumni. So we talked about how once you graduate the program, it doesn't mean that we're done with you. They're always part of the network. So Jeff here is currently the CEO of Pelindo, a trucking company based in the island of Sumatra. Jeff is passionate about building community of faith, and he's always excited and driven to bring the best out of people. Discipleship has always been on his heart, and when asked to lead RG cohort in Medan, Resource Global cohort in Medan, his response was this. This is the answer of my prayer. And he's committed to create a culture of whole life discipleship for every day of our life, every vocation we are called to. All right, Jeffrey, you want to start?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday afternoon. So I'm just gonna start because I don't have a lot of time to what I'm gonna share. So can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So today I'm gonna talk about uncovering our calling in our work. So this is so much of more about how I learned to discover my calling in everyday work for the past 5 years since I joined Resource Global. A little background about me. I studied overseas for about a decade, so a lot of my work culture and my principles is shaped overseas. Coming back here to Indonesia, to Medan, working for my dad's family business, it's quite a culture shock, and especially if you know the palm oil industry is actually very shady. There's a lot of black market, a lot of mafia. So what my family business is about is we are doing trucking. We transport palm oil, crude palm oil from factories to refineries to the ports. So while we are transporting the goods, there will be people stopping my drivers to sell the goods for half the price. And sometimes they offer drugs to my drivers, in exchange for the crude palm oil. Sometimes because of the debt, they have to, again, sold the goods that we're transporting. And this is the norm throughout Indonesia. And I suspect probably Malaysia as well. So it's a really, we kind of like working with the, just the mafia, dealing with a lot of cops and, just again, coming from Singapore and Australia, where everyone does everything according to the rule. And coming here working for this company, it was really, really hard for me to uh, stay in the company. So, after working for 3 years, eventually I kind of questioned myself, what am I even doing in this company? Being a Christian and all, being the only Christian in the family, it's really hard to uphold Christian values for my dad's company. So that's actually when I'm thinking like, should I leave? Is this even something I should be doing? I don't see myself glorifying God in where I am. Should I even find another job? Should I even leave Medan and just go overseas to work? And yeah, so during those seasons, that's when I found Resource Global. I asked myself, where can I learn about more about this? And I talked to my friends, and one of them referred me to Resource Global, and that's when I found out about Resource Global. So, so these questions that I'm asking is actually called. I'm actually looking for fixed calling. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so when I think almost everyone asks these questions, like, what does God want me to do? We want a specific answer from God to tell us to do something, and then we go and do it. Much more like Noah, like Abraham, like Moses, and sometimes perhaps you're considering, oh, maybe I should should go to full-time ministry, because you simply can't see how you can glorify God in your workplace. And that's good and all. Sometimes you have a clear voice from heaven and tell you, hey, you go and do this, like how it is in the Bible. But I don't. If you look at, if even if you look at the 66 books of the Bible, that is very, very rare. It does not happen to everyone. And I think for the majority of us, like I would say 95 to 98% of us, we don't get that kind of voice directly. And we call it, we are in the waiting season. We like to say that. And when we are in that mode, we don't know what we should be doing and waiting for a direct answer from God. We wait and wait and wait and wait, and then just forget about the whole thing. And I think and there's an issue in that. And most people want an answer right away. We want an answer right away, but most of the time it does not happen that way. I'm sure all of you guys can relate to that. So even in my search, I prayed, I read the Bible, I talk to my pastors, like, what should I do? Should I stay? Like what I don't see how I should be, and I feel like I should be doing something, not working, getting money from selling the goods, forcing my drivers to do all those things. It's really, really hard. I don't get an answer for these things. And so, yeah, I mean, like, that's when I joined Resource Global. And I'm just going to share what I learned, how we can uncover our calling. If you're not made for a full-time ministry, if you're called to stay in the marketplace, there is a way for everyone to glorify God wherever you are, in any season, because we are to glorify God and work for God at all times, even though times are difficult. So this kind of questions, the fixed calling, I call it fixed calling, the questions that we ask, it's not wrong. Like sometimes we get an answer, and that's great. But the problem comes with, what if the answer is not there? What if God does not give us a specific direction to do? That's when we become paralyzed. So that's what, and now I want to introduce you guys to formative calling. So, I was frustrated with my work. Again, even after joining Resource Global, I see these amazing people, doing social justice. And, I know Julia, this, if you've heard about Dr. Sher, she built a floating hospital, sent it to the east side of Indonesia so that people have medical access. And then I thought to myself, like, oh, maybe it's something I can do as well, like, doing for the needy. And then I remember of my past, how my parents used to bring me to visit orphanage like almost every year. No, actually every year, sometimes twice a year, to the very rural areas. We got to drive like 3 to 4 hours into the middle of nowhere. I don't even know where it is now. And just giving food. Sometimes we cook together. Sometimes we provide clothes. I remember my mom asked me to fold it, and write a little letter for the kids, and just keep it there. And then, but then I remember again, my parents weren't a believer, and I'm sure like God has blessed the kids through whatever my parents did. But this question pops up to me, like what's the difference between a Christian giving all these things and a non-Christian like my mother? And that's when a view of formative calling can actually help. I'm going to go through this really fast because I don't have a lot of time, so bear with me. I'll explain it with my example later. So the first thing that we got to understand about formative calling is, first, we have a universal primary calling for all Christians in the world. It's in Mark 1, verse 17, Jesus says, "Follow me." It's a very easy instruction. Our first primary calling is actually to follow Jesus, going back to the Father, and that is the calling for everyone. And then the second premise that we got to understand, the second calling for everyone is, I'm just going to read the verse, Genesis 1, verse 28. "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds and in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." This is before the fall. And, after the fall, God gives like a bunch of instructions for us to follow. You got to do this, live righteously. So what we do and how we live the world actually matters to God. And these two callings is universal for everyone. So if we are to tie them together, it's basically everything we are, who we are as a Christian, what we do, and what we have, what God has entrusted us, our community, the material things that we own, the relationship that we have, is counted and used in many ways that form us in both our primary calling to love Jesus and our secondary calling to do good works in the world. So if I'm going to paraphrase them, next slide, please. To have a formative perspective is to understand that God could be working through everything in our lives right now to drive us toward Him and toward the work we could be doing for Him. So, just imagine, maybe some of you are familiar with the gospel narrative, the creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Right now, we are in between. Now that we are being redeemed, and before everything is restored, we are now in the sanctification process, right? We are God is shaping us to be more like Him. We are preparing ourselves to be a future citizen of heaven, and at the same time, God wants us as the future citizen of heaven. And now that no, actually we are citizen, but it's just that the kingdom is not ready yet. Is to be the light in the world, to also allowing people around us to have a taste of what heaven looks like. That's what it means to be the light and salt to the world. That's why, we know the greatest commandment, which is to love God our Father, and to love our neighbor. And I don't want to go deep into that, but basically, just remember this part. Again, a formative perspective understands that God could be working through everything in our lives right now, in any season, even though we feel like we're under the wrong place, to drive us toward Him and toward the work that we could be doing for Him. So so the first thing that I learned in Research Global, I think through my mentors and the communities, is that even if I know this is not this company, my family, this is not something that I'll be doing forever, or perhaps even if I'm gonna quit next month, doesn't mean that, like for 1 month, I'm not doing anything for the Lord, right? Just think about that. Every time we say that we're in the waiting season, we actually, I mean, yes, sometimes we have to wait, but doesn't mean that we are not doing anything. There's a difference between waiting and not doing anything for the Lord. And that's when we can become paralyzed. So it's important, again, to understand the formative calling, which I will elaborate now. So again, we all have a vocation, a calling, and it is important to recognize that a calling is much more than a career. It's more than just a job, guys. It's like being summoned. Being summoned by God to participate in His grand plan of renewing the whole world. And a career is actually not big enough for us. That's why perhaps that's why you're here. You're looking for something more. We are meant to be more. We are created to something bigger than just our career, even though we spend most of our waking hours probably for work. But it's not big enough for us. God meant something even bigger for all of us. And a career is something we choose, something we push to succeed in, and that's fine and all. But a calling is something even more. It's something that we are summoned by God to do. And God has all our telephone numbers, and He keeps on redialing. And all we need to do is probably, just learn to pick up the call every day. So, let's just skip the verse just quickly, because we're short on time. So let's just give you an example to illustrate what formative calling looks like in a biblical character. Let's use Moses. We all know the story of Moses. He was called to lead the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, and then eventually reached the land of Canaan. He's an amazing guy. We know that he's living for God. But so yeah, I mean, just look at the graph. There's so many things that he did, but in the Bible, it's never written that Moses, could he have known when he lived in the palace, before he went out to see the slaves? He was what was he doing in the palace? Well, we know that he's fluent in Egyptian, so he was studying to speak the language of Egypt. When he was studying that, do you think he knew that he would one day stand up to Pharaoh on behalf of the helpless Hebrew people? And what was written in the Bible, that Moses was very, very familiar with the Egyptian rules, customs, and culture. Again, that means he studied those things. And even when studying those things, do you think he knew that he was going to do all these things? He understood both Egyptian Hebrew culture and theology profoundly, during those seasons, even though Moses didn't know when he's going to end up, he continued to obey. And even though he does not know that he's obeying, we know from bird's eye angle that God was forming and preparing Moses for his mission from the moment he was born. But even after he led the exodus from Egypt, we know that God was still forming Moses. We know that God led him to Jethro, his father-in-law, who taught him how to lead a nation because he didn't know how to do it. And throughout these stories, God often spoke to Moses about his roles and duties, and God formed Moses throughout his life for his calling. So Moses is a perfect example of not just formative calling. He's actually received a fixed calling as well. Going back to the story of my parents visiting orphanages and giving to the poor as a non-Christian, even after we receive a fixed calling, okay, let's say you have a specific instruction to give to the poor. So what after that? What's going to happen after that? we just keep on giving and give and give and give. How about our relationship with God? Like, so where is God in all of that? And if you look and you got to realize that we are also in the making, in the midst of all the brokenness in the world, we are broken as well. In the story of Moses, God was also shaping Moses. That's why it's important to not just receive even if you have received a fixed calling, and to just go and do things without reflecting, and without praying, without any communities to support you. That can be very dangerous. Which I'm gonna share more. This is the good example. I'm gonna share the bad example, which comes from me later. What mistakes that I did. So this is what formative callings looks like. Again, sometimes Moses at the beginning, Moses didn't know where he would end up with, but he continued to obey, even though when he did not know what he was doing. He continued to study, and we know that God is continuously forming him. In the same way, right now, even probably at this very second, God is continuously shaping and forming us to the man that we are meant to be, like how he originally created us before the fall, before the sin, and before the brokenness. So yeah, it's important to understand that. Next slide. Yeah, so this is what a quote from Timothy Keller. A person who adopts a formative mindset towards calling can see how the goodness of God working in every aspect of their lives could be shaping their sense of vocation. And next slide. And he also says, don't buy into the lie that all work has to be interesting in order for it to be meaningful. Because imagine, being a farmer, imagine being an accountant, imagine being a security guard. For in modern world like today, being a farmer is not like a cool job and everything. Perhaps you want to do something more. Everybody wants to be a startup founder. Everybody wants to be a CEO. But imagine a world without farmer. What are we going to eat? Even if you have to, imagine every single person becoming a full-time ministry, working for the church, going and evangelize. Who's going to fund the church? Who's gonna like pick up the vegetables, the carrots, shepherd the sheep, so if you or the cows if you love beef. Yeah, so again, God can work through us through everything. Some work can be very repetitive, mindless. Can you imagine a young Moses sitting in a class reading about Egyptian arithmetic? It probably felt like like a lot of work, a lot of drudgery, but when we look at formative perspective, a formative calling, that's the perspective that we are invited to keep in our everyday work. I know I'm going through things very fast. I'm going to use an illustration later to help you guys understand this concept even more. So how do we come about to discover our calling? How can we discern such a call? What are we to do? To the occasional saying, yes, it's okay to ask God, Lord, what do you want me to do? Sometimes the call is apparent. It comes immediately to you like a voice in heaven, but sometimes it does not happen to us. So this is actually, if you've read from Os Guinness or Tim Keller and Andy Crouch, if you might be familiar with what I'm going to share now. But if not, I'm going to share it right now. So the first thing to do, for us to know our calling, what we have to do right now in this moment, in whatever situation that we are, is to look closer into our lives right now. The first thing we got to look at is our affinity. In other words, the people around us, the community that we are part of. In other words, our friends, our Christian community, our church, or even our family. And then the second thing we got to look at is our work. So the question we ask ourselves is, probably, what do my community needs? What communities am I already part of? Which perhaps you haven't joined one. Which one would you like to join? What's the community's strengths and weaknesses? And then you start thinking about what gifts can you offer to the community? What's your limitation? And if you are not engaged with community in a significant way, why or why not? Start looking into your life carefully. In terms of work, you can look at your workplace or industry and see if it's 100% excellent and efficient? If it's not, what is inefficient or even perhaps 100% wrong? How can you best serve the people or bring about positive change through your profession? How can you begin in small ways to participate in God's mission? And then the second thing you look at is your ability. Now that you identify the needs that, this is what my community and my workplace needs, we started to look into our abilities. What are our gifts, our hopes, perhaps your dreams, your interests, and which one aligns with the needs that you have listed above. And be careful in starting with your gifts. Be careful with starting with your ability. If you notice, I put affinity first, then ability. Because if you start with your gifts, then you're limiting your calling to what you can do right now. Remember what I shared about Moses? God was still forming Moses even after he led the exodus from Egypt. He did not know how to lead a nation, and he learns, and because he eventually knows that he's going to go there. And for me, I'm not even right now, you can tell I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I'm actually very shy. I used to have a stage fright. Really, I wouldn't be able to imagine me being here right now, speaking to all of you guys many, many years ago. If I start with my gift, I can say like, oh yeah, I have stage fright, it's impossible for me to teach, to share in front of even in front of small groups. I get very nervous. Then I wouldn't be able to be here. But to understand the affinity, that's why just now asking our ability, we ask, like our abilities, our deficiencies, and even though we are not able to, but if that's our dream, if that's really burden us, that's something that you can pray for. And I actually prayed for, because I have the heart to equip people in my city to teach them what I learned. It's just that I don't have the skill. I actually pray for the Lord, to give me that ability, not so that I become, the most amazing speaker, and but just for me, at least not being nervous, and muster up the courage, knowing that the Lord is by my side, knowing that even when I make mistakes, I know that the Holy Spirit is taking care of everyone's who's listening to me. And if we work from that, using that framework, we start from the real needs first. It can really we actually allowing God to shape us, to use us even more, instead of limiting us to what we are currently at right now. Because again, we are in the works, we are still in the works, and all of us here are still very, very young. God will use us for something even more. So don't limit yourself, guys. God has a lot more plans ahead of for you. And then the last thing you got to look at is the opportunity that you have around you. Like if there's any chance, if someone suddenly invited you to do things that perhaps that you have identified. In my case, I don't know if Grace is here. After 2 days after I told my wife, I remember this, that I think I want to bring Resource School to Medan. 2 days after I received an answer for that, Grace suddenly, the previous country director of Indonesia, called me to offer me the position to become the city director of Medan. So sometimes it's not about the outward, what's the word? It's not about the outward things that we do, but a lot of things that is being shaped actually is within us. And sometimes we got to be prepared before we can do something for the Lord. Hopefully that makes sense. And look at the community. What is the community telling you? We must refuse to be individualistic in the way we discern our calling. In fact, the doctrine of sin alone should be enough to prove that we should not be trying to make decision ourselves. We are, thinking that we are above everyone. We make mistakes. We need people to tell us and point us to the right direction. And in Ephesians 4 verse 25, it says, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of the body. Remember, guys, we are all members of the body. Make use is the wrong word, but take advantage of the people that God has placed around you. Listen to them, build up the community, build the relationship. I think that's a super, super important. And when you list down all these things, there's going to be so many. Don't try to do everything. Probably identify 2 or 3 needs that really touch your heart, the one that really stands out to you, and just pray about which one you should start with. So yeah, so this is just a quick chart. I can find a exact Venn diagram for whatever I listed, but basically the intersection between your ability, your affinity, and your access to opportunity is actually your calling. Next one. Okay, so the second thing we got to do, before I go to that, perhaps if you're being honest with yourself, even maybe you're thinking of the needs around you already. Most of the time, our initial reaction to the needs we see is, basically, oh, I can't solve all the problems, other people should be able to do it. I'm not good enough. Or why even try, the Indonesia is already so corrupt that I alone can't do much. Or perhaps you say, oh man, that sounds too exhausting. I got 2 kids, I got my wife, I got my work. I have enough problems already. Why should I solve someone else's problem? I need someone else to solve my problems. And this very often these narratives emerge from our idolatrous tendencies, like our desire for comfort, for power, control, or approval. So this is not an exhaustive list, but if you want to, just categorize the 4 big ones, it's actually these 4. That's why money is worn so many times, because it can be used for all 4 of this. We can use money for comfort, right? To gain power, to control people, to gain a sense of approval. So this is the thing that we got to, okay, I think the chart, hopefully you guys can see the chart. If you are using your phone, please just look closely into your screen. So I'm just going to use an illustration, how we have to challenge our idols before we can actually do our calling, before we can actually, use our ability to fulfill the needs that burden us, that you have identified previously. Let's see, okay, let's do with rest first. Probably you might identify that rest as your need. Probably you have overwork, you don't take care of your health, and perhaps Lord, you think you have prayed and Lord is telling you to rest, and not working overtime. But because you overvalue approval, you're working for your boss, you want to get his approval, you tend to overwork yourself. And the story you tell yourself is, if I take time to rest, my boss will pass me over from my colleague from promotion. And you're scared of that. Perhaps that's what you're looking for, and that can stun you. And second, let's use another example. You might have identified service in a particular ministry within your own church as a need, but because you might overvalue comfort, you tend to avoid responsibilities there. The story you might be telling yourself is probably along the line, I have no time. How can I give more of myself when I already do so much? I have the right to keep back at the end of the week of a long day. I'm not serving there. Or perhaps, if I'm going to flip that, perhaps you spend too much time within the church. Why? Again, because guys, the best place to be a Christian, we know all about bearing the cross and everything, but the best place to be a Christian is actually within the church. When you serve, when you give your time, you are praised at church, right? You are recognized as a good person. When you lead a Bible study, even as I'm leading a talk like this, and my pastor will give me a pat in the back, like, good job for doing, things for the Lord. And yes, it's all and good, and I'm sure some people are blessed by that, but on our part, we got to be careful. Am I doing all this ministry actually for the Lord, or simply just to seek approval for the people? And for people like that, actually, Jesus has warned several times. So he likes to say, truth to be told, he has received his reward, which is acknowledgement from people from the world. And we don't want any of that. Going back to the story of how my parents visit orphanages when they're giving, yes, the kids will be blessed regardless of who gave the clothes and the food to them. But eventually, guys, remember, we will be judged for what we do. Unfortunately, and my heart is broken for saying this, my mom did all these things, not for the Lord. she's a strong believer, a strong Buddhist believer. She believes that when she does good, she will receive something in return. That's the first one. And the second one is, we do a big documentary of what we did and share it to, her friends, and just to show people that we are kind people, we are generous people, and that's how the devil can corrupt us as Christians, like in our intention to do good for things for the Lord. Remember, Paul says, whenever we want to do good, evil is always by its side. That's why it's very, very important to challenge our idols. First, obviously, we gotta identify them. Bible study, prayer, small group is very important for that. And I'm just gonna leave it to the church. I'm not gonna go through how you're gonna lead your spiritual life. But basically, that's what makes idols so scary. It can be hiding behind our narratives, our stories, and we can easily start justifying them. Everybody sins. Not everybody does it, so it's fine that I don't do it. And sometimes it can sound very, very good, which is why we need to, again, confront the stories that we are telling ourselves more honestly. And even most likely, our idols are working at our lives right now. And perhaps we have not identified them yet. And they affect very, very much the way we think about the needs around us. And if we allow these idols to affect us when it comes to ourselves, our community, and the world, then it's gonna be disastrous, guys. So yeah, I mean, like, out of the idols mentioned above, power, comfort, control, or approval, just think about which one affect you the most. Usually people tend to lean towards one of them very strongly, and maybe you can start working from there. Yeah, usually, I give time for us to just think about this, but again, I have to push through because of I don't have a lot of time, right? And okay, so the last thing, after you know the needs, after you identify idols, is start. Now we can start to new experiments. Now we can start to try new things, to do things for the Lord. So we think about, just to summarize, we think about, in what specific and new ways can we learn to believe in the gospel more deeply as we discard the lies, in other words, challenging the idols. And then, now that after we challenge the idols, how can we act out the gospel more effectively through the certain deeds that you have identified previously? And, you do all these things through reflection. Excuse me. You gotta reflect more, talking to people, lots of prayer, think about quick wins, a short-term plan, think about through at least one short practical step, or something that you can do immediately without too much effort, that you can execute immediately and see tangible results immediately, to encourage just to keep us into that momentum. And think about, and then start a habit or a plan. This is more for the long term, something that you want to do the long term. And then you gotta evaluate and iterate all of these things. And so, in the discovery of our calling, we often want a straight answer. Like I said, we want, just type a destination. This is, I want to go there. Type in the destination, and we can just, then usually, GPS offers a shortest path to our destination. But in discovering our formative calling, things is more like wayfinding than GPS. If you look at the right the picture on the right side, and when you see signs, everybody tried to find a toilet in a new shopping mall before, right? And sometimes the sign wasn't very clear. It says pointing there, but you mean like go to the left, or diagonally 45 degree there? What do you mean? And sometimes it's pointing straight. Are you going straight? And should I? And they put it next to an escalator. Should I go up? It's not. It's a lot of time. It's like that. Sometimes in our journey of finding our, the toilet, we overshot, and then we ask another person there, and then they point it back, and then you look at another sign, and then go to another direction, and then sometimes you got to go back before you reach the destination that you're meant to be. So, just to give you an illustration, I'm just gonna use my story, like how I navigate through all these things. Next slide, please. So again, after you guys know that I'm working for my family business, with all the issues there. After joining Resource Global, we got to come up with a gospel action plan, which is more like a capstone project, what we have to do after now that we've graduated from the program. So what I wrote there, I went through all these things, I identified the needs of the people, like, okay, what do my company needs right now? Like, what can I do for the people? How can I glorify God for the people? And I identified that there's a tension between the truck drivers and the management. So that's was written in my gospel action plan. And to be more specific, I schedule weekly meetings with my drivers, which never done before, one-on-one. My company is small. We don't have an HR team. Now we're planning to have one, but back then I met every single one of my drivers. I think there's about almost 200 people. I schedule like a few every week just to talk on them, spending about 1 hour and caring about them, listening to their needs, to their struggle, to their complaints, and kind of like just build a good relationship with them. And yeah, let's just use that as an example. And what can I do? The reason why I choose to speak to them, because I'm an extrovert. I love to talk to people. I try to build relationship. I love to learn about what's going on in someone else's life. And obviously that is something that I can do, me being the CEO of the company. I can just tell them, hey, and just allow them to be on leave for a whole day, just waiting for me so that we can spend it one-on-one. That's something I can do, like very, very easy for me. I mean, it took and next one. So yeah, my idols is comfort, and obviously control. I had to be careful in talking about job back then. And this is not within my comfort zone. I wish I could just just went out, spend more time outside, finding clients or just talking to hanging out with my friends. Because the meetings actually went till midnight at times. But I had to choose to know that this is important, and I don't do that every day, but spending 1 or 2 days of the week, just to build a relationship with each and every one of them. And once I challenge that, I'm sorry, next one. Yeah, so after sorry, actually I went the other one. So the first thing I identified is the need to create a new relationship between the drivers. And then after identifying my elders, then this is what I do. I think like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And what can I act out? And that's what I did. And that's written in my gospel action plan. And then I started doing it. So, the fact is, 2 years after I wrote the plan, guys, I did that. I even drink coffee with them sometimes. Just laugh about things sometimes. 2 years after that, my gospel action plan, I did everything that I wrote about that. There was a day where I remember there's about 40 to 45 of my fleet came back at the same time, transporting goods from one location to the same destination. And then my client called and then like scolding, like, what's happening? Like, why are all your drivers stole the goods? So apparently what happened is 45 of them agreed to steal the same amount of goods at the same time. So, they have that sense of belonging, so that, okay, like they can't do not, the boss can't fire us at the same time, let's just do it together. And things don't really go that smoothly, guys. And I'm sorry if you can just go to the next slide. Yeah, so that's and then I called them one by one, like, and tell them, like, how could you do this to me? I've been kind to you. Have I been kind to you? I give you what you want. You guys want a canteen, I built one for you. You guys want an air condition, not air conditioner, fans and everything. You guys want a canopy, I built everything. Even changing their salary. Just a lot of things that I've done for them. And I was super, super upset and very, very disappointed in what they did. I called them one by one. Some of them stayed quiet. Some of them, just apologized and went out. And then I think about halfway, about the 20th drivers, I think, as I was, talking to him, he actually interrupted me and he said this to me: please don't treat us this way. Why do you think all of us agreed to steal? It's because you don't give us enough contracts. So back at that those days is the lowest season of the palm oil, so we don't have enough contracts, and I was only able to give them 2 jobs per month. And he said, that's not enough to feed my family. I'm stealing this not out of because I go to gamble or do drugs or anything, but I'm stealing this to feed for my family. I got to be a good father. That's why I'm stealing the goods because I don't have enough jobs. And that struck me really hard. And then, because of my ego, I remember, but then, just get out. But then I stopped calling the other one. I just left the office. But, on my way back and for the next few days, I start thinking, why I'm doing all these things. I pray to the Lord, how could this happen? Like, what can I do to help? And what God reveals to me back then is that I do all of these things because I want something in return for them still. I want them to see me as a good boss so that they can perform well. And that's why they don't. I get so very, very angry. And the Lord revealed a really, really ugly side of me, which is that, to be honest, I don't really care that much how they're doing. I care about me being kind, me doing my part. And you do your part. We, have a sense of ownership for the company, and that's why when these things happen, I got really, really upset. So yeah, it was a really scary moment for me. It's very transactional, apparently, the relationship. And that's when, we evaluate and iterate. Apparently, I've thought I've been doing things for the Lord for the longest, for 2 years, but I have not. Apparently, my idols coming. I want to be seen as a good boss. And when they and expect them to perform, and when they don't, I get very angry. And to be honest, I did not really care about how they were doing. So after realizing all of this, I went back to my drivers, because and then again talked to them. Okay, I apologize to them for forcing them to do all these things, for not providing them with enough jobs, for putting them in a difficult position. Yeah, I mean, like, it was really hard for me, like, because there's this part. God actually, in my effort to build a workplace, like how it is in heaven, apparently I've created a living hell for them. And man, I cried to the Lord, and I apologized, asking for repentance and asking for the muster up the courage to face them again. And I want to do it right this time. So I went back, talked to them, and see what they need, what's going on, and apparently they really do not have received enough from what I'm paying for them. So after 1 to 2 months, about 1 month of discussing, my company actually set up a fund that provides 0% interest for those that needs to take a loan for specific needs. And even after that, there are people who took $3,000 and left the company. It was really, really hard for me to convince my dad to do that. We have to do this. But you know what? After about a year or so, I'm glad that these people took the money and left, because now the one that stays within the company is the one that have the highest integrity. Our record is someone who take a $5,000 loan and paid back over 4 years. And this driver has been the most loyal driver ever. And even right now, they have their own union that kind of protects the company. So if there are any drivers who's trying to hijack and sell the whole truck to the mafia, they will warn me, and I will call the cops and put a stop to them. And thank God, I have not had any incident since then. So even in the idea that what I want to do, like, oh, I'm gonna transform them, I'm gonna work with every single one of them. Never did I know that God wants me, first I was shaped first, God rebuked me. And at the same time, I never did I know that the results gonna turn out that way. Apparently, there are some difficult people that God, just allows to leave the company, and He helps me filter the company through all these things. So this is what I mean by the wayfinding, guys. Even after that this is what you got to do. Yes, the big picture is, I gotta build a relationship. Yes, that's the calling that God told me, but the way I do it was wrong. And that's why we got to do this experiment. That's why I call it experiments. It's more like, if you know startup, you probably are familiar with the term. You try small things, do it again, evaluate, and then if it doesn't work, iterate and try to do it again and again so that it's better. So yeah, in conclusion, your life is not a series of random events. Your family background, who you are, your education, your life experiences, even the most simple ones, all is there. God allows you to experience all those things, like how Moses is, even though you do not understand where you're going. God is using all of those things to equip you to do some work that no one else can do, to do some work that only you can do. And Ephesians 2 verse 10 says, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Just reflect on that. I mean, I don't want to go too deep because I kind of overshot my sharing. And yeah, I guess just as a closing remark, again, if calling can be very specific, but sometimes it does not. And truthfully, after going through all this time, after talking to a lot of people, our calling, our vocations very often unfolding over a lifetime and may shift, from one thing to another. It changes through every season. Now that I'm a father, things changes. The things that I got to do changes. My priority changes as well, and that's why it's important to know where we are right now. So this is just a quote from Tom Bolsinger, a professor in Fuller Seminary. The God who calls our names and offers us life and partnership in his own redemptive purposes fits us for the call. Fits us for the call. He's shaping us in doing our calling. God is shaping us as well. That requires us to grow, to be transformed, to become who God intended us to be. One's calling in life is not so much found as formed. Again, guys, one's calling in life is not so much found as formed. Or to say it more clearly, our vocation is not truly found until we are fit for it. To think about Abraham, we know he's giving Isaac to be sacrificed eventually, but if you read the book of Genesis, there's so many things that the part where he disobeyed the Lord, and God is using all those times to preparing him for that moment when he asked Abraham to give up Isaac to the cross. If you read the text carefully, Abraham knows that he's going to come back with his kid, but he went up anyway. That's the kind of faith that he has. And throughout, in fulfilling his calling, in fulfilling his duty, that the story that's going to bless us for many, many centuries, there are things that there were things that Abraham had to go through as well. So yeah, lastly, again, our calling is more than just a job. Our calling in life is not so much found as formed. Our vocation is not really found until we are fit for it, and it changes throughout season of life. And I'm done. I'm sorry, guys. Usually we go straight to Q&A, but because we short on time, I'm just gonna go straight to our Research Global program. So before I go through all these things, perhaps what I was sharing is very confusing. Yes, I don't expect you guys can be able to find your calling straight away. Even it took me like a long time to get this, to practice this. Even right now, I'm in a driven season. I'm still, waiting for what I have to do right now. That's why community is very important in finding me, being lost, being a lost kid in Indonesia, being in the city of Medan, and working for a non-Christian family. It was really tough where I couldn't find my calling. And this is why I want to bring Resources Global to everywhere around Indonesia, not just centralized in Jakarta, because I truly believe that there are so many people out there who are struggling the same thing. Perhaps you couldn't find a place, you couldn't find an answer, and Resource Global has blessed me so much in helping me find where to find a place in God's kingdom to do what I need to do right now in this world. Even just for your news, right now I'm still working for my dad. So yeah, Research Global, in short, we have a teaching session like this. Usually it's followed by a lengthy discussion, but for the sake of the time, we do not do it this time. We have one-on-one mentoring that is similar to your industry. I had Pak Suparno, who's in the palm oil business as well, to mentor me. And then we want to connect you with other people who's struggling through the same thing, who understand what you're going through, just sharing, listening, and perhaps sometimes can give you very constructive feedback. Resource Global is where everyone is gathered, like-minded people gathers. So the mission is to teach, mentor, and connect emerging Christian marketplace leaders around the world so that they can renew their workplaces and cities for the gospel. Remember, it's not just us that is being renewed. We are expected to renew our communities as well. And yeah, so our vision is to envision a global movement of Christians using their resources to advance humans flourishing and multiply gospel impact across all sectors of society. And what we do is we again teach, mentor, connect over the course of 8 months, emerging Christian marketplace leaders around the world, so that they can renew their workplace and cities for the gospel. And yeah, so now we're just gonna play a video and then gonna pass it to Jennifer, our program director, to give you guys the details about what our program is all about. Thank you.
At Resource Global Indonesia, we are dedicated to empowering Christian young marketplace leaders to live out their faith at work. We do this through an 8-month cohort program where there is gospel-centered teachings, mentorship, and connection with a global community of like-minded peers.
So, faith and work, my understanding before joining RG was kind of like a separation, secular and sacred divide, basically. But what really helps me to understand that through joining RG, that there is no separation in that.
I think RG does a very good job in trying to set up my identity in Christ when we're filled with our identity and how we're about to go in the marketplace and how we're about to bring the resources that we have to serve other people and to do our work, not just to do it for the sake of doing work, but it's actually to serve God.
I just love being part of the Resource Global family, and that in itself, having that community is having other cohort members to talk and to share all the different challenges that we face in our work and running our business, just being able to learn from them as well, how they deal with each individual, how they lead their businesses in a godly way, and also being able to learn from the Bible and just how to share, allowing the gospel to transform the workplace.
Our passion is to see the gospel actively reflected in every aspect of their lives, with the ability to drive renewal and transformation in their workplace. Although RG has only been in Indonesia for 8 years, it is a global institution that has impacted a total of 13 countries to date. We hope to reach more cities in Indonesia with the launch of the virtual cohort in 2025. Apply now and make your work matter.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny, and I'm glad to be here. Me together with Jessica, the Zoom host here, is the program coordinator of Resource Global. And I'd like to actually thank Jeff as well, for teaching us, for sharing us your story, and also sharing about the heart behind Resource Global. After listening to all this sharing, now you may ask, practically, what does this program look like? So first of all, this program is available for anyone who resides outside of Jakarta within Indonesia, because this will be our Resource Global virtual cohort. Our cohort program is an 8-month program starting from January all the way till August 2025. Earlier, Jeff mentioned that what we do is that we teach, we mentor, and connect. So in our program, we will have one teaching session a month, usually on a Saturday morning. For our teaching, we have a set of curriculum that articulates the gospel as our foundation to build our understanding of faith and work. We will also have a triad group gathering where we meet once a month. So in this program, you'll be assigned to a group of 3 to 4 people with a facilitator or a tried group leader who would facilitate the discussion, mostly on how to internalize the teaching that you received before. And then individually, you will also be paired with a mentor who is a seasoned believer in their field. Earlier, Jeff mentioned about his mentor as well. And so within the 8-month program, you can meet with your mentor up to 6 times. And for this mentoring, the timing is flexible. So you can make an appointment anytime with your mentor that works best for you. So the average time investment per month, if you do join our core program, is about 5 to 6 hours per month. Now, all these things that I just mentioned will happen locally in Indonesia. But on top of this, we also will have a global cohort gathering, which is a 3 to 4 day retreat where RG family from all over the world gather to learn from our global teachers, to pray, and to connect with other like-minded believers. This global cohort gathering is not mandatory, but it is highly encouraged for the cohort members. Usually cohort members who went always say that it is one of the highlights of the program for them. Even our alumni would join again year after year if they have the chance to do so. So we definitely highly encourage you to join this if you do join our program. Next, now here are some of the profiles of our teachers. We have a combination of global and local speakers who are not only experts in their fields, but also one who we believe have and live out the heart of God in what they do. So if you attend, maybe some of you attended the M633 conference earlier in August, you might be familiar with Bob Dahl and Steve Cuss. So Bob is the president, CEO, CIO of Crossmark Global Investment. He's a prominent figure in the financial services industry with over 40 years of experience. Then we have Steve Cuss. He's the founder of Capable Life, and he's very famous for writing a leadership book called Managing Leadership Anxiety. We have Missy Wallace, who is in the field of consulting, DJ Elmore. He runs many companies under the Elmore companies. Then we have Crawford Loritz. He's a counsel at the Gospel Coalition, if you've heard of that. Also a board member at Chick-fil-A. He is a phenomenal teacher from whom I always personally learn a lot. Then we have Bukoni Rasilim. She is one of our local speakers, and she has tons of experience in the field of education. If you have heard of Covenant City Church, you probably would know Pastor Tezar Putra. He actually taught one of our classes on gospel-centered story in this year's cohort. And lastly, we have Alan Barnhart. And if you get the chance, I would highly recommend you to do a research on him. I think his teaching and his own personal journey of stewardship is really, really inspiring. So these are some examples, not all our teachers, but some examples of the profiles of the teachers that come in to teach in our cohort. Next, now on the area of mentoring, what we do is that we would pair you with a mentor that has some commonalities with you, be it industries or your areas of focus. So in the application form, if you decide to apply, you will fill out an application form. And in that form, you can also state the areas you would like to get mentored in. So we can also try our best to match you with them. We have a pool of mentors from various industries and fields ranging from agriculture, education, finance, F&B, logistics, or if you want to focus on a more general topic like social impact, leadership, family business, entrepreneurship, we can also try to match you with a suitable mentor. If you don't see your industry or area of interest here, don't worry. First of all, the list here is not exhaustive. And also, since Resource Global is a global organization, we do have the access to share some of our resources like mentors with RG from other cities as well. And now, sorry, you might ask, like after our 8-month program, what happens next? We know that our discipleship journey in following Christ is not easy. I think even as we listened to Jeff sharing earlier, and God doesn't call us to do this alone. So after you graduate from our program, we will actually welcome you to the Global Catalyst Network, or GCN, which is Resource Global's alumni platform that we established to continuously equip and to journey together with over 100 of our alumni. So in this Global Catalyst Network, we would have regular teaching or workshop on various topics, or sometimes we would also have industry focused group and fireside chat. Also, if you are a person who has the heart and desire to pour out to the next generation leaders, we also would be very happy and willing to partner with you on this. To give an example, in this year's cohort, we have an alumni who runs a podcast on healthy masculinity. And as part of his gospel action plan, he actually wants to partner with Resource Global to host more events on more talks about healthy masculinity, to equip more men to understand what masculinity in the eyes of God is. So that's also an example of what you will get to do if you are part of our Global Catalyst Network, which is the alumni program. And so we have now reached the end of our session. We hope that through this session, you have a bit more clarity on who we are, our heart for Jakarta, for Indonesia, what we do, and more clarity on the program itself. So we'd like to invite you to think about it. Talk to us. If you still have any more questions, if you'd like to talk to some of our alumni, feel free to reach out to us as well, and we can connect you with them, and definitely pray about it. Some information that might be helpful. Early bird registration ends on the 14th of September, which is next Saturday. So we have a week before the early bird ends. And the application deadline is on the 15th of October. If you'd like to check out our website, feel free to go to www.resourceglobal.org/virtual, or you can check out our Instagram handle at resourceglobal_ID. If you're ready to apply, you can type the bit.ly link that is shown on the screen. So bit.ly/RG2025 apply now, or you can also scan the QR code on the screen. Okay, so thank you so much for your time and for attending this session. I think we can open it up for Q&A now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. So this is the time, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to, unmute yourself and you can start asking your questions, or you can raise your hand, or you can also just type on the chat box and we'll read it out for you. Because I'm sure it's a lot to take in from the program, but also from what Jeff has presented. So any questions? Jen, do you mind explaining a little bit on what are the time investment needed to join the program? And what are the things that are included in the program fee as well?
The time investment is about 5 to 6 hours. That includes the teaching session, the mentorship, and the triad group gathering. On the program fee, Jeff, you want to answer that?
Kind of what's included in the basically once you register, what are the things that you're getting?
I think it would be what we explained in the program earlier. So the teaching session, the mentoring, and the community. But also actually once you join the Resource Global family, you have a lifetime access to our resources. So I think I mentioned a bit about the Global Catalyst Network earlier. So our program doesn't end in just 8 months, but afterwards, you will continuously be able to be part of the continuous teaching and learning and community that we provide in GCN.
So question that I got a lot actually, as we're talking about every year we talked about Research Global and everything, right? So a lot of the question were like, oh, what if I'm not in leadership position? What if I'm not the CEO or I'm not a co-founder or founder? Then is this the program that wouldn't be relevant to me? So what do you think, Jeff or Jen?
Jen, you want to do it or? So I think what matters is that you have sphere, you have your own sphere of influence. I think that we have artists, we have if I mean, let's say you are a photographer. To be honest, if you ask me, because I'm not one, I wouldn't be able to know, to verify God in the marketplace, but and in being a photographer and all. But I'm sure that you can, and I think just the heart behind it, and the people that you're impacting, and you have the kind of people in your community, like what I said just now. I think that's one of the requirements you can join.
And I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, Jen, I might have missed it, but if you can explain a little bit about, so what's next? Let's say you have applied, then what's next? Is there gonna be any interview or
Sure.
what it look like?
Yeah, so once you have filled out the application form, oh, by the way, in the application form itself, we do ask you to submit a recommendation letter. There is a guideline attached in the form so that you can see what is expected from the recommendation letter. And that recommendation letter actually can be submitted separately or afterwards. In case you're trying to get the early bird as well. If you do want to apply first and send the recommendation letter, that's also fine. And once you have submitted your application, one of us from the team will be contacting you to schedule an interview between you and the admission committee. So this interview, usually it's a great time actually for you to also just be able to ask more questions about Resource Global, because the people who are interviewing you are mostly our alumni. So they can also share to you about their experiences as well. And it's also a way for us to get to know you more. So after the interview, I think the decision will be announced for the application will be announced sometime in mid-November. And then if you are accepted to the program, then I think around December, that is when the program fee will be due as well. So.
All right. So if there's no other questions, I would like to just close, but I would just kind of let you guys know if you still have any questions, or maybe you cannot think about any other questions, but suddenly after like 1 hour after this, you're like, oh, actually, I want to know more about things. Just go to our Instagram at Resource Global ID, click the link in our bio, and you can definitely schedule a 15 minutes interest call. So there's this thing called 15-minute interest call available. You can click the link, schedule a call, and our team would be more than happy to answer any questions you have, any information that you need before you proceed to the next step. All right. If that's it, Jen, Jeff, do you have any other things you want to add, or we're good?
I'm good.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
All good? Okay. So forgot to do it earlier. Forgot to open in prayer, but let's close in prayer. So let's bow down our head and pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much, Lord, for just allowing us to have this time, Lord, to learn more, Lord, about what you want us to do in our life, Lord, to utilize our talent that you have given to us, Lord. Lord, help us, guide us as we are asking these questions, Lord. Let us seek for your guidance, Lord, and not just satisfying our own ego, Lord. And help us to be obedient, to obey as well, Lord, and to be obedient to your calling, Lord, in our life. Thank you so much, Lord. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.